Hello. Today is Monday, and it is January 17th, and it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day here in America, in New York, and all over our country. And it's Commissioner in Car time. I'm happy to come to you today. This will be a quick one. Friday. Mondays are usually a holiday, but with the news that happened over the weekend, on Friday, I felt it was important not to miss today's Commissioner in the Car, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy and how that relates to the voting rights fight going on tomorrow in the United States Capitol. But first, the news on Friday kind of came as a shock to many people. But actually, I guess it was Thursday night it started to hit, is that John Katko, the congressman who's been serving in Congress in our area since 2014, has decided not to run for re-election. It's a little late in the cycle for this announcement, but it did come. As many people remember, John Katko got in trouble with his own party because he had the temerity to actually vote for impeachment against then sitting President Donald Trump on the second impeachment trial after the January 6th insurrection. This put him on the radar of Donald Trump, and he had vowed to run a primary challenger and fund a primary challenger against him. However, I don't know if that necessarily was the decision that came about with Mr. Katko. He says he's wanting to spend time with his family, and there's been a lot of personal tragedies in his life over the last several months, and I don't want to doubt his insincerity. However, the fact that this comes so late in the cycle, and in a weird time for it to happen, leaves me to pause about what is out there that we don't know. Because as I alluded in the Syracuse.com article, this is interesting timing. Because the maps for the district are not yet drawn. They will be drawn probably at the end of this month. And because of that, because of waiting so long, but then also acting early, he's actually given Democrats the biggest tactical advantage they could have, because he now is allowing the Democrats to make a choice of what to do with the Central New York district. As we all know, the New York redistricting process, a process that I am not in favor of, but a process that is going on nonetheless, is ongoing. And the Independent Redistricting Commission has put in maps that were soundly defeated by both houses, by both parties. I think there was less than a dozen total votes in the entire New York State Legislature for those maps. So those maps are gone, and the Independent Redistricting Commission, and I only call it that because that's what the media calls it. It is not independent. It's actually more akin to the Onondaga County Redistricting Commission, as the political appointees are drawing the lines. They have an opportunity to put forward new maps. However, I don't believe that they'll come to a consensus again, and then more than likely we will see a rejection of the other maps. And then the New York State Legislature, as designed by the voters-approved constitutional amendment, will be allowed to draw the maps. Now, it's important to remember that when the voters voted on this, it was the Republicans in the New York State Senate that blocked independent redistricting in New York State, where citizens were doing it, and because they were in control of the Senate back in 2000, before 2018. So for the Republicans to cry foul now is rich. Because this is the system that they set up, that they wanted, and they blocked any true reform for redistricting in New York. This system is better than it was before, but it's still not great. And it does look like it's going to go to the legislature to draw the maps, much like we saw the legislature draw the maps in the Onondaga County redistricting. The question is, what will those maps look like? And that's the issue with John Katko announcing on Thursday that he's not running. I'm sorry to take you around a long bend there, but the reason that this is important is because now the Democrats can decide that whether, a normally Democratic area voting for president, voting for Congress, voting for Senate, or not for Congress, voting for Senate, voting for statewide offices, that John Katkos has been able to hold on to, whether they will only make that district a little bit more Democratic, and since it's an open seat, gamble that they'll win that district, and then shore up other districts, or really pile on and make it a super Democratic seat, ranging from Oneida through Syracuse down into Ithaca. Those are some of the maps that I've seen out there. But it's important to remember that we don't know what they're going to do. We have really no idea. And the people who think they know usually are the people who have been wrong about redistricting. No offense, John Henry, who's in the comments. The people who've been wrong about redistricting all the way along, think they know what's going to happen. And I think now with Katko being out of the district, this really puts into play what this district will look like in a much more open way. I think if John Katkos had stayed in the district, it was quite possible that they were going to bring Tenney over into the district and then make it as Democratic as possible. And I think, look, this is why I'm against politicians drawing the lines. That being said, this is the process that the voters have put in place, and that process will have to be seen through. And then of course the Republicans will have to decide whether the maps that the Democrats draw are violations of New York state law and take them to court. As we know, partisan gerrymandering cannot be taken to court on the federal level, only racial gerrymandering. So we'll have to see what this shakeup does, because we could see them continue to do what they were. It looked like the Democrats wanted to do, was bring Tenney over into the district, force a primary, force Tenney to run in a way more Democratic district than what she is in now. The question is, do they shore up the Delgado district, or do they create another district and try to get some more competitive districts? This is we'll have to see what happens. And I know, John, you put in the comment that you think Tenney's going to be pushed into the Leeds district. That's possible, but one of the things is that part of where Tenney lives in Oneida is more Democratic territory than up there in the Leeds district, and they may want to pack Republicans into that one district up there and let them at it. But we'll have to see what happens. And then, of course, remember, you do not need to live in a district to run for congressional office. So Tenney could decide to run in any district and then decide to move in there after she wins. And that's especially true in redistricting years, but is true now. Now, of course, the carpetbagging notions will come into play, but we'll have to see what that means. So we'll just have to see. It is definitely going to make a Republican-leaning district definitely competitive, and maybe even Democratic-leaning, depending on what the district is. I also expect this to cause chaos on the Democratic side. While we know that there were 3 candidates that had already announced, we will not know if there are more candidates that will announce because of this shakeup. And I imagine there will be more candidates that are announced. But I will also point back to 2012, when Dan Maffei was running for re-election, or not running for re-election, running a second time against Jim Walsh Jim Walsh also announced pretty late in the cycle that he wasn't going to run. And while there was a lot of talk that more candidates would come out, ultimately less Democrats came out. Now, the difference there is there was a seen favorite for that race. Many people felt that Dan Maffei came so close to beating Jim Walsh in 2010 in a Republican year, he deserved a second shot against him. And then when Jim Walsh got out of the race, they felt that he deserved a shot at winning the district outright, which he did. And I believe it was Sweetwater that he ran against and beat pretty handily. Of course, the difference with that year and this year also is the presidential year. This is seen as possibly a Republican midterm as opposed to a presidential Democratic jump. So, as you know, that after Walsh, or after I'm sorry, this was 2008, 2010. I'm sorry, 2000. I got mixed. It was 2008 that Maffei won. And, you know, he ran against Walsh in 2006, he came very close, and then he ran in 2008 and won against Sweetwater, and then in 2010, he lost to Anne Marie Burkle, and then he won again in the rematch in 2012, and then in 2014, he lost to John Katko, and John Katko has served in this seat ever since. So, I guess what I'm saying is this seat is there's going to be a lot of twists and turns into what happens in this seat. I think it's going to be dependent on how the seat is drawn, which is also another big change to the seat. It's going to be drawn while there is possibly an open incumbency. So what do they do with Central New York? Do they split it up? Do they make it an ultra-Democratic district? Do they make it a competitive district and shore up some of the other districts? I'm thinking the Delgado district, and make it easier for him to run for re-election. These are the choices that they will have to make. You know, look, I'm talking in the truth here. I'm not going to pretend that the Democratic Party that is in control of the legislature is going to draw fair districts or community-based districts. Of course, that's because it is not independent redistricting. It is appointed redistricting along with legislators drawing the maps. So now, will it be as gross as some of the redistricting we saw in Ohio and Texas on the Republican side, that are in North Carolina, that are being challenged in courts, in Republican-friendly courts, and being rejected? Maybe not. And so the question is, you know, will the maps be enough to give Democrats an edge in New York 24? Will it even be called New York 24? These are the things that we're going to have to wait and see as these districts are put together. But as I said at the top of this podcast, today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And obviously Martin Luther King Jr. Is a huge influence in my life as a voting rights advocate. He is one of the foremost fighters for social justice, but also voting rights in American history. And, you know, I shared on my timeline, you know, a couple of his quotes today. One about that you cannot be truly a citizen without the right to vote. And the other one, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have them memorized, and the other one about the American democracy and the Senate filibuster blocking voting rights. And these quotes are as true today as they were back when he spoke those well over 50 years ago. So as we look towards tomorrow, there is a major battle going on in the United States Senate regarding voting rights. The For the People John Lewis Act, I think is what it's being called now, the combination voting rights bill, is being brought to the floor of the United States Senate after having already passed the House. And while 50 senators have said they're in agreement of the bill itself, there are still two holdouts to changing the Senate rules and altering the filibuster to allow for a up or down vote on this voting rights bill. And those are Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin. So while this bill looks to have a large amount of momentum against it, I'm going to choose to hold out hope until that hope is no longer there. And the reason is because I think it is important to have an up or down vote on this. Have people stand where they stand on voting rights. We know the entire Republican caucus is going to vote against it. We know why they're going to vote against it. The National Republican Party has felt that it is better to let the states in which there are Republican governors and Republican legislatures alter their voting rights to a point where it makes it harder for minorities and elderly and what is seen as Democratic-leaning bases such as students to be able to vote, instead of just protecting the right to vote. A stance that they had 40 years ago unanimously. Not even 40 years ago, 20 years ago, I think they authorized in 2006 the Voting Rights Act by near unanimous consent. So the fact that the Republican Party is blocking this should not be overwhelmed with the news of what's happening with 2 Democratic senators. Well, make no mistake, it's the Republican National Party that are blocking these voting rights bills. And the 2 Democratic senators are helping them do so by not agreeing to the change in the filibuster so far. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow. I obviously am in favor of these bills. I think bringing parity to early voting, parity to voting hours, parity to to the rights of people to cast their vote in every state is something that we cannot just sit by and let states decide what to do, especially since what we see them do is so often to arbitrarily and maliciously restrict the vote. And a lot of this has to do with absentee ballot voting as well, or mail-in voting. These states have moved to restrict mail-in voting and absentee ballot voting, even though a pandemic is ensued, because they felt that Democratic constituencies use mail-in voting more than Republicans, and that's a lot because of the rhetoric of the former president. In fact, in 2019, in Onondaga County, we saw that absentee ballot voting was actually used quite equally by Republicans and Democrats, even though Democrats outnumbered Republicans in Onondaga County. However, since then, we saw that Democrats have used absentee ballots more than the Republicans because of the threat of coronavirus, but also the rhetoric from the right against mail-in voting. It's ironic that the Republicans are moving to restrict a voting method that they so often won because of in previous years, and I do think it's short-sighted. I think they are going to eventually hurt their own get out the vote efforts by keeping people from using absentee and mail-in voting, and eventually those methods will be the law of the land and will be overcome either in court or at the national level, and so it's a shame that they have decided that they need to do this, and that's why the federal government needs to act. They need to make sure that early voting and absentee ballot voting is standard throughout the nation, and there are a lot of blue states that need this as well, and even New York is actually one of the lowest number of days. It's 9 days of early voting, and you need an excuse to absentee ballot vote. These are places where New York is behind, and the rights of the citizens are in jeopardy. So, we have a lot of work to do in New York, but this legislation will help that as well. So, I'm hopeful. I'm not hopeful, but I will have hope that tomorrow we will see some steps towards more equality in voting, and if not, well, we're going to have to organize out of it. It's not easy to organize out of it. It is not the answer. The answer should be that we are passing this legislation, but we cannot lay down if they do not. We have to make it as easy and have a robust GOTV, to make sure that our government is reflective of our overall population. And that is how government is supposed to work. So I'm going to end this pod with that, and I hope that later in the week I will be coming to you telling you about this past legislation or what the steps are after that. Later this week, I will have Onondaga County Comptroller on Friday. He will be my guest on Zoom with Zarni, Martin Mastapole, a good friend. And we'll be talking about year 2 of, he's the highest ranking elected Democrat in Onondaga County. And we'll be talking about what he has in store for his office after 2 years, and what he hopes to do in the next 2 years. And then I'll also on Wednesday be doing my final look back at the November election, and looking at how the populace or how the makeup of elected officials across Onondaga County changed or didn't change for the most part. And then we will move forward after that, talking about budgets and other elections as we wait for these maps, because that's when the maps come out for the state redistricting. I will be doing deep dives on how these state districts have changed, getting ready for the June primary. So that's what I have on tap with Wonky Wednesday. Remember to go to DustinZarni.com. You can subscribe. You'll get updates when election news breaks, as well as all my content that I bring. It's always free. It always will be free. I pay for it with my own money. I accept no donations on it. It's part of my voter outreach efforts. And so please go there and subscribe. And I hope you are taking some time today to reflect on Martin Luther King and what a great man he was, and what a great calling his words still have in our hearts to expand and protect the right to vote across our great nation. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later in the week. Bye-bye.